call the meeting to order at 6:30. And welcome everyone to our meeting. And what I would like to just get into the record that Ms. Davis is running late. She'll be here soon. We're meeting via Zoom this evening in accordance with the Commonwealth's laws during the pandemic. I want to let everybody know this meeting will be recorded. And I'd just like to go around the room and ask the CPC members to identify themselves for Ms. Tinsley. And if they are representing another committee in town, just state which committee that is.
Leo Maestranzi, the Conservation Commission.
Trudy Reed, I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
Trudy Reed, Housing Authority.
Rick Woodland, Planning Board.
John Cusolito, Joint Recreation.
Sue, have you? Yep.
Susan Malin at large.
Janet Barrett at large.
I think that is all of us, correct? Right? Great. And in deference to the folks that are on the call tonight that are going to speak on a specific topic, I'd like to take a minute to just adjust the agenda, not removing anything, just moving some along so that we could jump right into the presentations. So unless I hear otherwise, I'd like to move agenda item 3 and 4 to after the presentations. That would be approve the minutes and review the fund balances. I think also the chairwoman would like to be here for that as well. So I'd like to, do we agree?
So
Yes.
moved, Mr. Chairman. So
Thank you.
moved.
The next thing is public comment on any issue that is not in front of the committee today. Is there anyone that would like to raise their hand and talk about something that we've talked about in the past or something that might be coming up or of interest to them? We'd love to get some input.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I do not see any hands raised.
Thank you, sir. We will then move on to the main reason for our being here tonight is the presentations by 3 different groups that are asking the CPC to help support their projects. All worthy, I'm sure. I'd like to turn it over first to Superintendent Tracy, and will give us an updated presentation on the athletic field facilities and their upgrade. And I'm going to ask that we keep our presentations and comments to 20 minutes. And if we have to run over, I think we'll ask the board if they'd like to continue with that topic and run over. But we'll make that decision together. Mr. Tracy, it's your call.
Good evening, Mr. Woodland and committee members. Appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. Certainly want to address the elephant in the room. There have been previous tensions, I guess, from the people who may have been on the committee over the years with school department versus, kind of in the CPC realm from previous projects. And I've worked hard to try to connect more deeply and more transparently with our communities, with our select boards and our FinComs and our town manager and administrators to really rebuild those scars that occurred years ago that continued to kind of be out and about. And certainly it's unfortunate, but I'm trying to connect with each of the boards to make sure they understand that we realize some of the things that have happened in the past and some of the tensions that have been there. And I look forward to rebuilding that and getting the opportunity to continue to work with our community members to continue to build that and bring our communities together. Which brings me to the project. The project we are looking for is what we are calling the Athletic Facilities Improvement Project up behind the high school, middle school complex. It has a number of facets that have grown over the years. Now I've been here 10 years, and I believe this has been in the making for more than 10, maybe 12 or 14 years, going back in time. There have been a number of different groups and committees trying to drive this and make it happen. And the project basically, I know you received the package, it was pretty lengthy. I tried to include as much as I could for the committee members to read and understand, and certainly ask questions when you need to. The project consists of a main field, which is currently, you would consider the football field, but for us, it's all sports because, all of our kids use it, lacrosse and soccer and field hockey and youth sports, and, several of the community groups will use our fields. That would be also be surrounded by a new track. One of the additions we're hoping to put in there right next to our track behind our current stands, our current home field stands, are tennis courts. If you know the high school, about 20% of the high school kids play tennis. We do not have a home court. We do not have the ability to have our kids at home. We generally rent spaces around the other communities in Ipswich and at Gordon College and things like that. So we're hoping to be able to add in tennis courts, also a synthetic softball field, synthetic baseball field with a multi-purpose field kind of built around it. So it'd be a all-purpose field for anybody that needed to use it. There's also an addition of a concession stand, but it includes bathrooms, which is a requirement of ADA. The ADA laws require us to have a certain number of toilets available within a certain number of feet from the stands, based on the number of seats that you put into the project. Then if necessary, we would update the press box. Again, ADA requirements would require that to have a lift or an elevator, depending on how tall it would be. So it's a substantial project. I included in the packet a kind of a map of the project and what it looks like behind the fields, if you will. And there's a segment that's outlined in red that was already approved by Concom back in 2017. The approval has been extended until next October. What you see in the blue, the softball field and the tennis courts and some small areas out in the open grass fields, they are yet to be determined by Concom. They did a tour yesterday of the whole area and got some inside information from Tom Geary, our maintenance and operations person. And they're currently working with Gail, who is a designer, to answer a bunch of questions that they had. So they'll have at their next meeting, I think they'll deliberate on that blue section, if you will. Currently, this project is a $15 million project. Our plan is to attempt to reduce the long-term cost to taxpayers by not sending them, a whole $15 million, hey, here's $15 million, we want to raise your taxes. I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible. And by doing that, I'm looking at all of the different options within the community. If you look in the school FY24 budget for next year, that's currently being voted on, I think, while I'm speaking, is there is a $1.68 million transfer into our stabilization fund, which we were able to open up in the fall of October, this past October. That fund is specific for us to be used, that money, is specific to us to be used to offset the cost of this project. We also have the opportunity, as you may know, to access $500,000 in the patent fund, the patent homestead fund, which was put aside years ago. There is a trick to that. There has to be a match from Wenham as well. So that would be $500,000 on the Hamilton side and approximately $250,000 on the Wenham side. That's separate from this group, but in being kind of open and honest about where we're trying to get funding sources. I asked for $800,000 from your committee and the Hamilton CPC, because I think it's an opportunity for us again to take advantage of some kind of monies that are set aside for recreation, open space, things like that, and use it to improve our communities, improve our schools, and give our kids, all of our kids, not just the kids that go to school, but also community members, a place to go that they can be proud of, that's beautiful, that's open and active just about year round for everybody. And that ask is, again, I know that gets broken up into based on the assessment, the 2/3, 1/3. So we're hoping that we can get money from each of those areas. And then there's a final funding source right now. There's a private group, HWAFIC. They're the Field Improvement Committee. That's a private funding group, and they are working to raise funds as well to offset this cost of $15 million. And we're projecting anywhere between 500,000 and $2 million or more from that group. And if you take all those numbers, we should be able to bring the push to the taxpayers down by about $5 million, approximately $5 million, if all of those pieces fall into place. And that's one of the reasons I'm here tonight, just to say that we're looking to find ways to take the full burden off of taxpayers, although, I understand where the money's come from CPCs, and I really appreciate that. And I think, this gives us all an opportunity to bring our communities together, coming out of COVID, looking at our schools and trying to improve opportunities for our kids. Currently at high school, we have 29 sports that we offer over 3 seasons for boys and girls. There are a number of those sports that need to be moved off-site during the year, especially the further you get into the year, because the fields are unplayable. So, for example, our state tournament soccer team had to play their games that should have been home tournament games in other places. That happens quite often. Our tennis team, same thing. They play hard, work well, and end up having to go to another place for their home field. So we don't generally have a home field all the time available for our kids. 70% of Hamilton Wenham Regional High School kids participate in sports. That's a huge number when you start to look at all the things kids could do at the high school. 70% of them touch the athletics program. Within that, there's all the kids that are involved in youth sports and the opportunity to make the connection with youth sports and to be able to reach down into the community and make connections from the oldest kids down to the youngest kids, and really have the families involved as well in building an opportunity that I think it just brings the communities together. 92% of our teams are recognized as academic distinction. 100% of them have received sportsmanship honors, and then 83% of our kids qualify for tournament play. Tournament play is hard if you play on that main field, which is currently the football field. But if you play on that field for your tournament, it's used so much that you generally don't have a home game when you get into the playoffs, which we call the tournament. So this is an opportunity for our communities to come together, take some pressure off fields across the communities. When you start to look at any of the parks or any of the fields at the parks, they really have, if natural grass, they really have a shelf life, if you will, throughout a season. If you're playing on them every day and you're playing on them in the rain and they're getting torn up, it makes it harder and harder the further you go into the year. We've had some years where we've had to say to youth sports, you can't play on the field on Sunday because it's a mud bowl. It is just mud and water. So I think this for us is an exciting opportunity. It's like I said, this has been going for, I think, more than 10 years in our community, and there's been lots of conversation around it. And I just think it's an opportunity for us coming out of COVID to bring our communities together, make some connections with our youth and our families into our schools, and also to be proud of a project that can really connect to so many different people and so many different families. And realistically, the final goals of the project: bring kids and events back onto campus, enhance the community athletic experience, not the school system athletic, the community athletic experience, relieve pressure on all of our fields around the towns. There are a number of fields that we all use, the library, Pingree, Patton. This is an opportunity to relieve that pressure, address our accreditation facility deficiencies that we were just recently cited for, which includes our fields and athletics areas. And then to build community pride and attract families to our communities to stay and grow and build their families and be part of our schools and part of our neighborhoods and communities. So with that, I'll take any questions if you have any. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening, and certainly look forward to working with all of you in the future beyond this.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy, and the school department for helping us understand better the needs of the school department and fields. I'm going to do a couple things. One, I'm going to ask a question, 3 things. Then I'm going to invite the opening of conversation, and then I'm going to introduce Ms. Davis, who is back. So my one question is, what's the research on these specific chemical-based turf fields? My concern as a citizen of Wenham is what happens. I know there's some conversation around these not being the healthiest fields because of off-gassing, the pebble, the little pieces getting caught and breathing. And Is there a study that you can refer to that you could help with that says these fields are safe?
Yeah, if you go to our website, we have the project outline. We have an FAQ document there as well. There are currently no scientific vetted studies. There are these kind of outside groups that have done studies to say, we think this, we think that. Even the state of Massachusetts, we reached out to them to say, what kind of information do you have related to PFAS and what time to the crumb rubber, off gassing to overheating and all of those things that have come up in conversation. There are no studies that can concretely say this is happening. You know, we have a field right in town, the Pingree field. I don't know that anybody's taken any time to measure that or seen any differences since it was installed. But right now, any of the information we're getting is saying that there are no real, quote, scientific studies. They do come from private groups. So the field groups will do their own studies if they're, you know, the turf groups, just like oil companies would. And then the opposing groups would do their own studies, but there's nothing that we've been able to find that says definitively these things are happening. So there are a number of things that you can search online. We've tried to include those in our FAQ document.
Great, thank you. Are there others with questions?
I have a question. I'm confused why you asked for 800,000 from Hamilton and Wenham. To my mind, it should have been 400 from Wenham.
So in all honesty, I wasn't sure how the breakdown occurred.
I love it. Okay.
So to be honest, that's exactly what it was. I was thinking of the 2/3, 1/3 break. But I wasn't sure how that worked for, I know how it works when we assess the towns. I just didn't know how it worked for the CPCs. And I had that explained to me by the chair of the Hamilton CPC. So I have a better understanding now.
Okay. So are you reviewing what you're asking for? And you're asking for 400?
I think the opportunity is we're trying to get 800 in total. And again, I understand the committees decide and the committees, you know, decide yes, no, or we can go this direction or that direction. So I think the reality of this is we're looking for 800,000 total, and however that gets divided up.
Oh, okay. So I thought, all right.
Therein lies my confusion, right? Sorry, I made it worse.
Yeah. See, I mean, I was thinking you were probably going to get 1.2 million, 800 from Hamilton and 400 from us. But if you're looking for 800 total, I got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? But I also want to be a timekeeper here because that's part of my job. We have about 10 minutes or so.
Rick, I have a couple of questions.
Trudy? Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Mr. Tracy, for that presentation. You said something about the fields are currently unplayable. And so I'm wondering why, and I'm assuming the maintenance haven't been kept up over the years. And what's the guarantee that the maintenance on this new project, how's that going to be kept and how's it going to be funded?
Sure. The maintenance of the new project, the easy question first, would be funded through the school budget. We have broken down a 10-year plan of how to do that, so we can supply that if the committee would like to see that. Actually, I think it's in the packet. There's a breakdown of the maintenance schedule for us. When you look at the fields now, they're grass. When you're playing on them every single day, it's hard to grow grass. You know, we had to seek special permission this past summer to actually use the well water to water the grass to get it going for the fall season this year. And by the middle of a football season, between all of our teams and youth sports playing on it constantly, there's no grass left by about the second week in October. So to get grass to grow during a season is almost impossible if you put seed down. There's also the growing season. The growing season is in New England, as you know, is limited. So you're looking at late spring into early fall. We do seed and overseed, fertilize, water when we can get permission. But once you get into a season, you can put all the seed down you want. It just won't grow because kids are always stomping on it and cleating on it and things like that. I mean, a tackle football game picks up a lot of turf.
Okay, I'm sorry, Rick. I'm not sure if I said I had several questions, so I'll try to be quick.
Please go ahead, Trudy.
So as a as a resident of the community who I can say I've been there, done that. My kids are no longer in school. What would you say to the public? Because you said something about it's a community school. How would the public without kids be able to use this?
Public uses our fields now. I mean, we have people walking on the track throughout the day, on the weekends. You have people that I believe would use the tennis courts once they're there. It gives them an opportunity. Pickleball is hot right now, so you'd put in tennis courts, and you'd be remiss if you didn't line them for pickleball as well. So I think it's a matter of inviting the community. So think of the softball field is used all summer by, again, youth sports and private programs. There's also rental opportunities to offset some of those costs where places like Gordon College charge us to use their fields. So we could kind of flip that around and say, okay, when other people need to use the fields because of the longevity of the turf product.
One more quick question. You mentioned this other fundraising group. I forget what you called them. Can you tell us what they're doing to fundraise?
Sure. They are
I'm just curious.
currently, yep, sure. They are currently a totally separate group, 501c3 private group. Some of them, the people that were involved years and years ago, they're reaching out to all the kind of the bigger people within the community, like the bigger companies, Ed Fund, savings banks, things like that, to try to drum up a connection for donations with the opportunity for naming rights. And I think that's an important piece of it. So, that's also a whole separate topic of tension. But, realistically, if you donate $500,000, do you get naming rights for something on the field? So those are discussions that will happen between that private group and the school committee, because ultimately the school committee would decide based on their policies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Eric, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate all the detail. You mentioned the accreditation process that the school is going through right now.
Yes.
Can you say a little bit more about the impact, if any, that this project has on the accreditation that's currently underway?
Sure. We do retain accreditation. We do also, we also were cited for not meeting one of the 6 foundational requirements, which is learning spaces. And our outside fields are learning spaces because our gym classes use them as well. Our health classes use them as well. As you know, we have Project Adventure on the property as well. So part of that becomes when they come and visit, they review everything. They talk to kids, they talk to coaches, they go out on the fields, they go on the track. I mean, if you walk on the track, there are chunks of the track missing. So they'll cite us for that initially, and then they'll expect us between now and the next 2 years to start some process of addressing it. We report back in 2 years to them. They came this past a year ago, March, did the visit, sent us our report, and outlined the things that they expect us to work on. So one of those is our learning spaces, and it's not just fields; it's things like our science labs as well. They're just really not meeting the needs of our kids.
Leo, I know you had a question.
Does this artificial turf have a lifespan? Is it 10 or 20 years, or is it something that just lasts forever?
It doesn't last forever. It has the current turf that they're using. From what we're being told by vendors, it lasts between 10 and 15 years, depending on how you, quote, take care of it, which I think is important to note that, here we go. We're going to replace a turf field, which what they call the carpet, the top part that you can see right now would be roughly about $800,000. I think it's important for us to also build into this whole project a longer term plan to save money over those 10 to 15 years, to put aside money, I should say, to be able to make those hit those maintenance goals along the way. But roughly about 10 to 15 years, which is exactly what you can also bond a project like that for, no more than 15 years because of the life cycle.
So if it was 15 years, though, if it was 15 years, it wouldn't be another 15 million. It would be, you say, less than $1 million to replace it.
Correct, because the major cost of the project is really what's under the fields and around the fields. So the drainage, the piping, everything that kind of is, we have a whole, water retention system built under the fields to reduce the water flowing off the site. Any of that stuff really costs the money, the quote construction and prep work. The carpet, if you will, is a much cheaper price, and depending the softball field, for example, would be much cheaper than the main athletic field. So it just depends on size. And I think what you'll see 15 years from now is a whole new technology coming to light, because right now they have what they call infill, which basically holds the blade of grass up, and they have all these different choices now where if you put your field in, I don't know, 10 years ago, you got crumb rubber and that was it. And that's what people right now don't like. So now you have options like coconut husks that you can get in there that are more natural. So you're seeing the technologies increase and improve each year with turfs.
Thank you.
One other quick question. Why don't most professional sports teams like Fenway Park use artificial turf?
It's a great question. The only thing I can tell you is I just read an article about the Tennessee Titans switching from grass to turf for next season because of injuries. And that's an issue that you're seeing kind of batted around in the NFL. I think the NFL and soccer kind of go back and forth on it. So I don't know why. I think sometimes it's climate. If you have, you're in a cold northern climate, I think you tend to go with turf because of the growing season and trying to regrow and kind of get your turf back, if you will.
I would like to thank you, Mr. Tracy. I just want to be mindful of time. We're coming to the end of our appropriated time for this. Janet or Mary, you haven't had a chance to ask a question. Harriet, you haven't had a chance to ask a question. I just want to make sure if you do have a question, you have a chance to get it in before we have to move on.
One of the questions that I had was, one of the letters said it was bordering on negligence that we didn't have a turf field. When they use that expression, I'm thinking, how could it be bordering on negligence?
Yeah, I think it comes down to safety. We've talked a lot about injuries. We have a lot of knee injuries on our sports fields, generally on our main field. Lots of soccer players, football players with a fairly heavy amount of injuries throughout the year. And I think that may be what they're talking about. I wasn't part of the letter writer, but I think that's where it comes from. And if you go on the football field, for example, in middle of October and try to walk that field, it is a bumpy, rolly mess of danger. It's dangerous, and if you're playing different sports, like field hockey is a great example. If to keep the ball on the ground, you try and get the ball forward, you can watch a ball go across the ground on our field and shoot in the air when it hits some undulation that's either from no grass being there and there's a big hole, or some type of a change in the terra firma. So it's really I think that's where it would come from, honestly.
Oh, okay. And so there is a spongy material underneath the turf.
Correct. It's called the shock pad, and
Okay.
that's what kind of gives it that bounce. You can almost think of it like a pad that you put under your carpet. If you put carpet in your house, you put a pad underneath it.
Great. Anyone else, Janet or Harriet? Hearing no requests, I want to thank you, Mr. Tracy. Oh, Sue,
Sorry,
let's go.
I didn't know, sorry, Rick, I didn't know I was muted.
Oh,
And Eric, I'm a little concerned because November of 22, the NFL has proposed that they get rid of all turf fields.
Yeah, I think that's what I was just saying. The conversation's going back and forth between.
Well, it is going back and forth. My other concern is that over 80 degrees, athletes are getting burned by those fields. And my third, and I know you're right, I've done a lot of research on this for another reason, and I know it goes back and forth. I understand that. But my other concern is these fields have to be raked after every use with special equipment. And I know you said that you've looked into that, I think is what you said a few minutes ago.
Yep.
Which looks like we're talking about another personnel, some equipment, et cetera. I'm worried about that piece. That's all, the financial piece down the road.
Sure. And we build that into the school department budget. We wouldn't expect anybody else to pick that cost up.
Well,
The
we would.
machinery, by the way, the machinery is built into the current price. There is the maintenance machinery too.
Well, it would be, the taxpayers would pay for that.
Of
Because
course.
that would,
Right.
if your budget increases for more personnel and more equipment, we will be paying for that.
Right.
Is there any option to not do turf fields? To redo all this as some really good quality grass fields, or is that not an option you're considering?
Again, it becomes a control of play. So some groups would not be able to play on those fields during certain times of the year because it always comes down to the ability to grow grass and how fast you can grow it and get it to fill back in. And that becomes it's a game of put seed down and hope no one walks on it, but we got to play a game in 3 days and it doesn't get time to set and it gets run all over. So
Well, we actually have done that for about 100 years.
What's that?
We've played on grass fields for about 100 years. So
Probably longer than that.
I guess my question is not that. My question is, have you considered doing that? Or are you only wanting to do turf?
We're leaning towards the turf only because we think it's a longer term solution and it opens up and takes pressure off of all of the other town fields. It gives all of our kids and our families an opportunity to not have to not play because of the unplayability of our fields.
All right, one last comment and then I'm done. The City of Boston just banned all turf fields because of the toxic PFAS compounds that are in the fields. They are no longer allowing them in Boston at all. That worries me.
Yeah, that's a proposal that was made, actually a requirement that was set by Mayor Wu. Again, I would go just to say, take a look at the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. They have a fairly good document that comes out on fields, but there's no specific evidence that points to that as a problem that's been proven by science. There are a number of groups out there that deal with it, but again, we have an FAQ on our website that answers some of those questions, and we're very willing. We have a subcommittee group, I don't know if you that works on this. We're very willing to dig into any issue that people bring up and would like us to dig further on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan, I think you had another question quickly,
Yeah,
because we're at the end of our time.
Okay, all right. I just have a quick comment. I've heard rumors that you're going for a $15 million debt exclusion override this year. Is that correct?
That is correct, because we have to. So when you put a project on for an override on the warrant, you have to put the full amount on. Our intention is not to use the whole 15 million. I plan to offset it with whatever monies I can get, as I explained earlier. The 500,000 homestead fund, possible match from Wenham, if I can get money from the CPCs, donations. So we're trying to bring that number down to be much less than 15 million.
Okay, so you're asking for, basically, we're having a new school. You're looking eventually in the next couple of years for a new roof. And now you want a $15 million debt exclusion override for a turf field.
Correct.
And the taxes in Wenham have just gone up dramatically because they've reassessed. I
Right.
think it's a lot to ask.
Yep.
Just a comment.
Sure. When you look at it from the perspective of maintenance, the maintenance that has gone by over time has now put us in that hole where things are, catching up. If we built these fields 8 or 9 years ago, they probably would have been between 3 and 5 million. So I hear you. I understand it. I'm trying to find a balance, and that's why I'm searching for every offset I can to this project.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, quickly,
Yes.
with the concerns that Janet Birch just brought up, I hadn't heard them before, but they sound legitimate, and that the superintendent seems to agree that there are concerns. I wonder, before we spend the 15 million, if we should just wait till some of those concerns are ironed out and proven one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stronzi.
Rick,
So I think
I'm sorry.
at this point, I'd like to, go ahead, Harry.
Rich, I would just like to make one comment, if I could, to Superintendent. I understand all the various things that you want to do for the turf field, for Cutler School, for whatever. But I want to pick up on what Susan Malin said. We simply don't have the funding available. We are a very small town. We only have 1,200 households at this point. Right. And I think that the school committee needs to go back a few steps, think about what is appropriate in our two towns. We are not Beverly, we're not Danvers, we don't have commercial districts. It's all on the back of the taxpayer, and the taxpayer is getting very, very hurt. That's all I wanted to say, just some words to think of.
Yeah, I
about.
appreciate it. I understand fully. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Ms. Davis. Thank you, everyone. I do want to end our conversation here to keep it a level playing field. We did go over a little bit. I want to
Rick,
then,
I just need a clarification question from you or Harriet.
okay,
Is the 20 minutes for the total presentation, or does that include Q&As after the presentation?
we just ran about 20.
No, I understand, but we're
minutes.
giving,
I'm
we're
trying to
giving each.
keep it, I am trying to keep it to 20 minutes, but there was great interest in this. So the discretion of the
Exactly.
chair was to
No,
extend the time to answer those questions. The goal is,
Right.
Is the presentation 20 minutes and then Q&A, or is the entire thing 20 minutes? I don't
The-
care that we ran over. I thought it was
the
very
entire
valuable.
thing is trying to be 20 minutes, and he
Okay,
spent
I just
about,
wanted to-
even about
okay, thank you.
16 minutes on his presentation, and then I went to
Okay.
that. That's what
This is-
I'm trying to keep to. I don't know, because I am now stepping down as leading this.
Rick, I want
done
to
a
thank
great
you
job.
very
Ms.
much.
Davis is taking over and signing off. I am, but we'll stay here in the background.
Great
Thank
Thank
job.
you, Rick.
Thank you.
Rick, I want to thank you very much for taking over at the beginning of the meeting.
My pleasure.
It sounds like it was a good start and a productive Q&A. And so now I just need to ask you, did you do on the agenda public comment and the minutes, or did you go right to Superintendent Tracy?
We did public comments. There were none, and then we moved the two administrative matters to the end so that we could hear the speakers right away.
Good, good, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, to stay as close to schedule as we can, I think it's time to hear from Win Dodge on the Wenham Affordable Housing Trust.
Can you hear me, Harriet?
Yes, I can. Mhm.
Thank you. And Joe has the slides there. Thank you, Joe. Okay, thank you. And on behalf of the trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the Affordable Housing Trust program, what it has accomplished, and where we hope to go in the future. Next slide. I think it's important to begin the presentation by reviewing the mission of the trust, as you see here. And I want to point out that there are two key parts of the mission that probably go without saying, but sometimes gets overlooked. One is preservation and one is creation, and creation of affordable housing and the preservation of affordable housing. And we'll be talking a lot more about both sides of this as we go through the slides. Next slide, Bill. First, the background. Based on a recommendation of the 2008 Wenham Housing Action Plan, the town meeting approved the creation of the trust, which was actually formed in 2009. And the trustees are responsible under the provisions of the trust for overseeing trust funds and for making allocation recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, it says, but it should say Select Board, excuse me. And the mission is to guide the allocation of trust funds to most effectively address Wenham's housing needs, including but not limited to 4 goals which were outlined in the action plan. First, advance public awareness of housing needs and community benefits. Secondly, prioritize allocation of funds to help achieve 40B. And 40B, as we all know, probably is a state mandate to all municipalities to have 10% of their housing stock affordable. And of course, this is the point about the creation part of the mission. Number 3 is to support the initiatives to help local town needs, and that is speaks to the preservation portion of our mission. Finally, number 4 is to advocate for town policy and regulations to promote creation of affordable housing. This might include working with the planning board and other agencies to support zoning changes as appropriate. For example, supporting home buyers, homeowners who wish to create accessory dwelling units. Next one. So, next slide, please, Joe. So what has happened? Well, the trust has committed just over $800,000 in funds to accomplish the largest goal set out in the action plan through the years, which surpasses the action plan, and the goal was to satisfy the 10% threshold of Chapter 40B. Now, it gives you the formula there. The town has achieved a 12.68% ratio of affordables to totals, and this is, to be noted, an impressive accomplishment for a small town. We have 178 affordable units in Wenham. So in order to what's the formula here, you just simply divide 178 by roughly 1,400 units in Wenham. Now that, I should point out, changes or could change, and it's something we're going to be paying attention to as we go along. All you got to do is just add more units on the 1,400 side, and without affordables, and all of a sudden that 12.68 becomes somewhat lower. So, but as we move forward to see what we must be mindful that percentages of affordables can quickly decrease, as we will show later. So we move on to, now that we've established theoretically, temporarily, this 40B requirement, we move on to what must the trust be doing in the future. And the trust, the next slide, Joe. There's much more work to be done. And this slide is a series of very strange statistics, which are really very kind of shocking for a town like Wenham. The federal poverty level for a family, a U.S. family, is $30,000. Approximately 123 households in Wenham, earn less than $25,000 per year. We estimate that 23% of residents are earning at or below the 80% of median income level, which is $80,000 in the Boston area. We could, and these people, this 23%, could be eligible for affordable housing assistance. And then almost 1/3 of Wenham's households are cost burdened. Now, cost burdens means that you're spending somewhat over 30% of your income to satisfy total housing costs. And that percentage is changing as we speak because the median sales price to date, as in December of 2021 was $865,000 for a single property, single family, and $540,000 for condo properties. And of course, as you can well imagine, looking at your valuations, that's increasing. But this gives you the idea that there are a lot of people who show potentially a lot of citizens that may need some assistance. Next slide. Now, the trust is much of the efforts of the trust will be moved to now to preserve affordability. If we're looking to help local citizens, we are preserving affordability. And it's important to, when the trust speaks of affordability, we recognize that affordability is not just for new residences, but includes residences of all ages, as suggested in the previous slides. And a key initiative here for the trust is to find ways that we can help people stay in their homes and not have to sell because of the high cost of housing. So with that said, the trust is considering, there's more, but the trust is investigating several possible programs that we could use to assist Wenham residents, and I've listed 4 here. First-time home buyer, down payment assistance, home buyer repairs and retrofit, ADU support, helping homeowners, initiate accessory dwelling units in their residences or close by, and a rental assistance program. The develop inclusionary zoning piece is listed here It's only as a change to zoning, only as a change to the zoning bylaw, which we will be recommending to the planning board next year. So all of these programs are organized and run by third-party people. Harbor Light will help with some. There's a maximum amount in each case, there's some sort of a maximum amount of income that a person can have, and buyers must qualify under this 80% of medium area income. And there's usually a whole series of mortgage notes associated with it. These are regular programs that exist. All we need to do as a trust is to adopt these programs and have the money available. So for the next slide, having said all that, as the trust works towards both creation and preservation of affordable housing, we see that the due diligence is absolutely necessary. In addition to the challenges faced by the current residents, Wenham is also facing potential unprecedented development over the next few years. And we list these here. One is the pending MBTA regulations, which are probably a year or two away from being finalized. The second is the potential development of the Gordon College property, which is looming out there. I don't believe anything has been filed with the planning board yet, but it's there. The next is being aware of these large tracts of land that are currently protected under Chapter 61 and so forth. Then the next one is identify properties available for purchase. That was true when we were trying to create a lot of affordable housing from scratch. But we're also looking to identify potential, if there ever was something, town-owned property that could be developed for affordable uses. The key here is that the trustees, in conjunction with the select board and other town agencies, need to be able to act quickly in order to ensure affordable units are created that offset new developments. This is where that formula 12.68% comes in. If you have a development, if you have, as small as it may be, comes in and they build units, regular units, without some type of affordables part of it, you are very quickly going to reduce this 40B formula. Many affordables, finally down at the bottom, many affordable units in Wenham are reaching the age where they could be resold or require repairs or retrofitting, and the Affordable Housing Trust can provide assistance to the units in the subsidized housing inventory, to keep them in a subsidized housing inventory. The idea is to preserve the houses. So if somebody, if the house were to be sold or couldn't be turned over, what we want to do is to step into one of these programs and be able to support the homeowner or whoever comes in there and keep it in the SHI list. So that brings me to finally to the basis of our request, and we're tying all this stuff together. We are requesting, therefore, $600,000 of CPC funds this year. And what we're doing is to, first of all, replenish the Affordable Housing Trust funds committed to the previous project. That's way back in the beginning. That was the $800,000 we've expended, actually more, to create the 40B units. So we need to replenish those funds. Secondly, and importantly, is to act quickly, be able to act quickly in order to be flexible as opportunities become available as described on the previous slides. And we need to be able to create programs to assist Wenham residents. We need to be, again, to be able to help people to stay in their homes. A key provision of the Affordable Housing Trust is that it can expend funds, and this is a key thing. The Affordable Housing Trust can expend funds without town meeting approval. And we've seen that in the past here in the last few years. Without town meeting approval, with approval of the Board of Selectmen, of course, and which allows us to act quickly within the timeframes allowed by law. And I've got three examples of that down below here: Maplewood, Spring Court, Stockwell, and the Pleasant Scene property. All of these, particularly Maplewood. Maplewoods, Havelite came to us in the middle of last year and said that with inflation, the project cannot move forward as it is. It requires more money. Otherwise, some of the pieces of it would be stripped out. And this was, of course, true of all the other projects in the state. And so inflation was rearing its ugly head. And we were asked if we could come up with another $250,000, which when we looked at all of the what we were going to, the benefits of that, we said, yes, we can do that. So within a month's time, we were able to make a decision after consulting with selectmen and others to authorize the additional $250,000 from the funds that we had already had in our bank. We could do that. So that speaks to being able to act quickly and be flexible and be able to do this without necessarily going back to town meeting. So that's just a good example of that. The Friend Courts and Stockwell units came on the market and were going to be sold. The town has the first right of refusal on those. And so we were able to buy those fairly inexpensively and convert them to rentals. And the rental requirement for rentals in Wenham is very hard to satisfy. So Pleasant Street was the same idea. It was a purchase and a resale of a unit on an affordable basis. So this kind of puts it in perspective of what we need funds for, to replenish our funds, to be flexible, to act quickly, and to create programs that help people stay in their homes. So with that, I want to open it up to questions, and the planning coordinator, Margaret Hoffman, is here someplace on the slides, and she can help answer questions probably better than I can. Before we do that, however, I want to thank on the next slide is the list of the current trustees. And what I really should do here at this point is to acknowledge for many years, almost 10 years, the work that has gone into Maplewoods by many, many people. Some have served on the trustees in the past. And so it's not just this list, but a lot of people who have been involved over the years, and they should be recognized as well. So with that, I'll ask if Margaret is online here. We can, Joe, you can probably take off the slides and we could go through. So,
Wynn, thank you very
Harriet?
much, Wynn, for an excellent presentation outlining what you've done, what you want to do. And I think also I want to pick up on this, one of the early slides about the condition, financial condition of a great many of the citizens of Wenham, which I was making a point about a few minutes ago to the school superintendent. So let's go around the room. Leo?
Wynn, just a quick question. The affordables on Friend Court and also on Hull Street out by Gordon College, in what price range did they cost us?
the ones we bought,
Including renovations, approximately 200,000, I understand.
So first of all, Parsons Hill was all sold to first-time home buyers there years ago. So it didn't cost us anything in those. And then, for example, what would happen here is if one of those was sold, and we're continuing to deal with situations up there where they could be sold. And if they are, the town has the first right of refusal. So in the case of Stockwell, we bought that for $115,000 and we converted it to a rental. So it's a fairly short money to keep that on the SHI. The units on, I don't know what the units in Parsons Hill originally sold for, but I guess, Leo, I would say another reason to be flexible here is there is another unit up there that could possibly, there's a elderly lady, and I'm not going to go any further than that, is in danger of losing their home because the bank is calling a mortgage. She can't afford to pay it. So we have a right of first refusal there, and so we have maybe it's premature. Maybe we can step in and buy the note or something like that. But that's the way it works.
What I'm getting at, Win, is the units at Harborlight cost the town less than $50,000 a piece.
I think that number is closer to 30 or 40.
See, much less than 50. And the ones at Enon Village, by the way, is in my neighborhood, and boy, they're a credit to the neighborhood. They cost us even less. So that when we acquire affordable housing, that we're able to get bargains like this. And neither one of those, in fact, adversely impacts the town budget too. That's one thing great about both of those. Thank you anyway for the comment.
And the timing is important, Leo, because with the money that we ask for now that goes and becomes available for Affordable Housing Trust to use, I mean, it's CPC money, and as long as we spend it according to the CPC rules, no, it never touches the tax rate. I mean,
I just like to get the most from my money.
I think so.
Anyone else with some questions, please?
Uh,
Yes, John.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson. Thank you very much, Mr. Dodge, for the presentation. You mentioned the Massachusetts MBTA requirements and that it's a couple of years down the road, but I'm interested to know how that requirement will impact Wenham, and if the trust has any role in our response to that going forward, in terms of if we do, how does that factor into the amount of money that you're asking for at this point in time?
I am not an expert in the MBTA regulations, but essentially what that does, if you have a town that's on the rail line with an MBTA station, the regulation is going to say that you will carve out a radius around that of, say, half a mile, and you will change your zoning. It'll be changed for you that will allow a multi-unit construction there. There is no, as I think right now, and Margaret's the one who can clarify this, but I think there is no requirement in that half a mile of tons of houses that can go in there for affordable. In other words, the 10% affordable requirement is, I believe, not there. So we have to be very careful. I think this is a little premature because, I mean, I don't really understand it all. I don't think anybody else does. We just comply with their requests from month to month as they keep sending. But it's dangerous. That, however, question relates to all these other types of big projects. If we don't require an affordable component to, let's say somebody buys a 61A property for 100 acres. If we buy it for open space, or no, if we buy it and we allow it to go to development, or we don't buy it and allow it to go to development, we have to insist that the developer provide a number of affordables to go in there to equal at least 10%. However, as you can see by the formula, if it's only 10%, we're going to quickly fall behind here. A good example would be the Gordon College one, which is very premature because there's nothing been filed on that. But they want to give us, they want 370 odd units up there with 10% affordables. Well, to us as Affordable Housing Trust, that's not going to be sufficient. So when it comes time to negotiate all that with the planning board, we're going to make that point. Now, whether our zoning, whether we can do anything about it, I don't know. But I guess the message here is this 10% business is a slippery slope if we're not paying attention to how we do it.
Wynn, thank you. Rick,
I would like to ask Wynn, hi Wynn, thank you for coming tonight. You know, I have a passion for affordable housing myself. Have you done any budgeting or breakdown of how we can assist seniors and other low-income people stay in their house? Question one, is there a budget for that yet? And number two, can we somehow, if this money is granted, put some kind of clause in here that it would be used just for new projects, to get new projects off the ground, so that we're always moving forward? Thank you.
I don't think, no, Rick, there is no budget per se, because we never know what's gonna happen. We're just trying to have the money in our coffers, in the bank, if you will. Kind of a strange idea here, but we just want to have the money in the bank in case this comes up. And
right.
it is coming up. I mean, it just happened. We just don't know. I mean, I could have that lady up on Parsons Hill requiring us to buy out that mortgage. We could have, I mean, immediately. There's another, I get calls now fairly regularly about situations that exist in towns, or Margaret does, where we may have an opportunity to step in and create some sort of program or make some arrangement to have them stay in their homes. And that's just part of it. We just don't know. So,
and that's where I'm at, Wynn, is that, you know, if we could look a little bit more at that, because that's something definitely I would support, particularly around seniors, and what it might cost to, you know, put a program together that is directly, I will defer, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken who'd like to, Susan?
Yeah, I just have a question. When you say rentals, who administers the rentals? And I keep thinking of the nightmare with the iron rail collecting rents during the pandemic. Who administers that whole thing and makes sure people are paying rents, and where does the money go?
well, in the case of Friend Court and Stockwell, we have Harbor Light steps in and does the administration to that.
Okay.
And both units are now in an LLC, which provides equity, the framework around that. So the rents are collected. We actually have somebody who collects the rents for us and does financial statements, and so we could keep track of it that way.
Okay.
Okay,
Each one's a little different, but that's the case in those two anyway. At least.
right. Is there
All right.
anybody else who has a question for Wynn at
Quickly,
this point?
in other words, we're asking the selectmen we're trusting the selectmen to put in place a committee that we trust will make the right judgments with this $600,000.
That's what I hope you think I can do with Leo.
You're not the only one. You're not the only one on the committee,
No,
and I'm not sure that the selectmen. I would hope, but I'm not positive the selectmen might appoint you next time.
Okay, well,
I'm not.
all right.
touching,
Just a
Are there any
consideration.
other, questions on new topics for Wynn?
I have one.
I don't have a question, but I have just a minor comment that we all should be professional and address it as a select board, because there is a woman on the select board.
I'm
They are no
sorry.
longer select men.
I
Okay,
apologize.
anybody else wants to speak? Mary, did you want to put your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Wynn what you do about lead paint in these rentals.
Good question. Hasn't come up. Yeah, well, if we are renovating something, then yes, we have to deal with the zoning code, the planning, the codes, building codes, and so forth. If it comes up, so certainly we have to deal with it.
But
We haven't had to. I have not run into that yet. But I'm sure if it does come up, you can't ignore it. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
and
well,
actually, if somebody has children under 6, you also cannot refuse them on the basis of the fact that the property might have lead paint. You must de-lead.
That would probably be true.
No, just throwing that out.
okay, Wynn, thank you very much. And if there are no other new questions or new topics, I want to thank you, Wynn, for coming on tonight and making a very good presentation. And at which point I'd like to turn over to Kristen Noon at the Wenham Museum.
Thank you, Harriet. We appreciate the opportunity.
Indeed. Thank you, Wen. Kristen, I don't hear you. Oh, gosh. Joe, can you help her?
It looks like she is unmuted. Kristen,
How about now? Can you hear me
I
now?
can hear you.
Okay. Sorry about that. New computer here. So thank you all very much for considering the application this year from the Wenham Museum and for inviting us to speak this evening on this application. With agreement of the host here, I'm going to share my
Kristen, you're muted now.
We need signs.
Sorry, I don't know why that would be. Perhaps I should, Joe, I hate to impinge upon you, but maybe it's best if you share the presentation from your end. I have sent you the file. I don't know if you can pull that up or not. I'm also happy to just speak without the PowerPoint in the interest of keeping you on your agenda for this evening.
no, sure. Just let me, if you just give me a minute, I was going to my email.
Thank you. Just as an opening remark, the museum just wants to thank the people of Wenham and the Community Preservation Committee for its past support. Over the last approximately 8 years, CPA grants have really been instrumental for the Wenham Museum in preserving and digitizing a very important collection of photography, the Benjamin H. Conant Photography Collection, which contains roughly 3,600 glass plate negatives taken in the town of Wenham from about 1890 through almost 1920. That's now available online on our website at wenhammuseum.org/Conant, thanks to the Community Preservation Act. And we've also made tremendous progress in preserving and protecting the museum's historic Claflin Garrish Richards house. This is a house built in 1660 on the spot where it stands today. And with the support of the CPA and the people of Wenham, we have been able to get that house shipshape in terms of replacing and repairing sills, shingling, siding, windows, masonry. It's been tremendous. And the last project helped ferry or direct rainwater and water away from the structure into a cistern. So now also as part of that project, we do have a cistern on site, which allows us to reclaim rainwater and to use that for irrigation to the extent that we need it. So thank you. Next slide, please. So currently the museum has one open CPA grant with the town. I just wanted to provide a brief update on that. In FY21, the museum was awarded $47,000 at town meeting to replace 2 HVAC units at the Wenham Museum. In between filing that application in January, and getting the funding and circling back with our vendor, the cost of equipment, the delays in getting it associated with supply chain challenges and what have you, have created some delays in that project. The cost today to put these units in is about $63,000. This year, the Wenham Museum is celebrating its 100th anniversary, and we are seeking donations and filing many grants, in support of the needs of the institution in this year. And as part of those fundraising activities, we are working to raise the balance of the funds needed. So we do have some gifts in hand already that can help cover that difference between that $47,000 and the $63,000, and anticipate we'll get the rest by the end of the fiscal year. So we do intend still to move forward with this project and to use that grant. Our hope is to order the equipment at the end of this month after our finance committee is comfortable that all of the funds will be received, and move forward with hopefully installing it in May. There's about a 6 to 12 week lead time on acquiring this equipment at this time. So I just wanted to provide that update as well, because as I know you're working on, reviewing your fund balances and what have you in advance of town meeting. Next slide, please. See, thank you. Our current application requests enhancements and improvements to the Wenham Museum's exterior, which will also benefit the downtown. The total project cost is approximately $122,755,000, and we have filed an application asking for $87,255 of that from CPA funds. Next slide, please. This is a design rendering of what the exterior will look like. I apologize, you're all looking at this on a computer screen, but the kind of gray driveway that you're seeing at the top of the watercolor image is the driveway between the Wenham Museum and the Town Hall. And the gray road at the left is Route 1A. And the large kind of brown colored structure at the right is the Wenham Museum. So with this project, we would like to put fencing around the museum's property. This would be a picket fence, in compliance with the rest of the historic district. And we would seek, of course, HDC approval for this. We would like to restore trees and plantings to the property. And we would like to make a special effort to plant native species, pollinators, and other kinds of plantings that will support colonial education that we do in our historic house with many school groups and visitors throughout the year. We have a burgeoning collaboration with the Hamilton Wenham Garden Club, which seeks to use their junior program as basically the young gardeners who can tend to some of our garden beds and our historic plantings while learning, about horticultural history in our region, and also, helping to support the Wenham Museum by giving back their donation of time. This project also contemplates putting a small patio off the front of the historic house. That would be an opportunity for folks to purchase a brick with their name on it. If you've been to the Wenham Museum, our current walkway has quite a lot of bricks on it with people's names on them. We get requests very often that people would like to purchase a brick. So this is an opportunity to help make that happen. This plan also contemplates moving and rerouting our walkway slightly and making it more accessible and a bit flatter. Our walkway does go up a slope. It's a brick walkway. The joints between the bricks are frequently eroded, by water. It's very difficult to do snow removal on this walkway, and it is difficult for people who do use a walker or a cane or are pushing a stroller or otherwise have something going on to get into our building. So when talking to the landscape designer, he recommended moving it slightly, expanding it and creating a larger flat area at the top of the walkway. We do have a small flat area at the top right now, and this would be slightly expanded. Our landscape designer was Hugh Collins, who is a past Wenham resident and I believe a past member of the HDC. So we had, many conversations about making sure that this project enhanced not only the museum, but the downtown. One of our goals here, would be really to create an attractive outdoor space that residents could use, as well as visitors to the museum. As a resident myself near the downtown area, I know we have a beautiful downtown. It's, people love the buildings and the look of the village, kind of down there, but we don't necessarily have a town common in the way that other communities do. So we would like to put forth our yard as a place where residents could stop. If you were out for a walk with a friend or what have you, and you wanted to find a place that you could sit in the downtown, and take a break or read a book or have a conversation, that would be possible, at the Wenham Museum's exterior. We also really think it would help enhance the attractiveness. I know there are traffic lights coming to the downtown in upcoming years. And I think as people are passing through and being slowed down by those lights, they're going to stop and look around. And we really want to make sure, they see that Wenham is an attractive and inviting place. And also we want to, really position the museum as a welcoming place for everybody who is passing by. I don't necessarily think the exterior of the Wenham Museum facility communicates what the interior experience is like. So this will enhance the welcoming nature of that, and again, also provide better opportunities for supporting education. Part of this plan, Joe, it might be a good idea to go to the next slide just to make it clear. So I believe I've summarized this to some extent. These are the goals for our project. We would also use this exterior for programming and events. Like if we had a fundraising event to benefit the museum, we could see that happening, you know, in our exterior on our patio. We have craft fairs at different times of the year and other events that use the exterior, and this would be part of that as well. So next slide, please. The CPA funding would support, per the application, the landscape beds, the plantings, the seating. That should say fencing. I apologize, it says fending, and also patio and masonry installation. Next slide, please. And other donations and other sources of support would help provide lighting, you know, seating, and replacement signage to the extent we have to replace our sign because of the fencing going in and what have you. We would do that with other forms of philanthropy. And I would anticipate that, you know, there's an opportunity for individual or family giving here. You know, if we wanted to replace our picnic table, that could be a naming opportunity for somebody. It's also important to me to improve the lighting around the museum. We presently have, you know, energy efficient security lighting around the museum, which is, you know, important for security and insurance purposes, but it's not very attractive. So we really would like to enhance the lighting scheme for the museum so that it still is providing that security function, but is very attractive at night. So people are passing through the downtown, the building really looks great. Next slide, please. This would be a pretty significant project for us and, you know, tie up access to the front of our building for visitors and employees and volunteers. So we would be targeting doing this project in a time of year when the museum is typically quiet from a visitation perspective. We'd probably redirect folks through Burnham Hall or through our function hall on the rear of the facility to access the museum while construction was going on. So we would be targeting late August and early September for the project, or alternatively May of 2024, because those are the time periods when things are most quiet. Our preference would be to do it this fall, and we can continue to, you know, add to the project over time as needed with private donations, but to at least raise the bulk of that 122 that we need now in order to get this project off the ground. Next slide. And that is it. So I thank you all again for your time and attention to our application, and I would be happy to address any questions or concerns that you might have.
Thank you, Kristen, for your presentation. And I would now like to ask people to put forth any questions they might have. Leo?
And just a quick comment on center of town. Of course, it's an important part of town, but looking at it like it is, the church and the town hall and the museum itself and the new police station and the monuments. I tell you the truth, I travel through there several times a day, and I don't think it's a bit unsightly like it is.
Okay.
So if we're going to spend a lot of money for improvement, I hope it's well spent.
Leo, that's your impression. What I'd really like now would be if people have any questions about the project itself, there'll be time later for us to voice any objections or concerns that we have.
What is there was a brown square in the plan beside, as you look at it from the main street, it would be on the right of the terrace.
So that, I believe, is the museum's 10-footer shoe shop. Presently on our site, we have a 19th century shoe shop that is on the side property line between our property and the yellow house next door to us. Originally, that shoe shop came from Cherry Street and was given and donated to the museum many decades ago. in Essex County and in our area during the times when many communities were agricultural, farmers and their families would do piecemeal shoemaking in the wintertime for extra income. So there are actually quite a few of these shoe shops around and about, especially if you look on older properties in town. What looks like a shed in a rear of a property might actually be one of these shoe shops. So there's been some conversation internally for us about moving the shoe shop to a more prominent location. Our board of trustees has asked me to explore if it's possible to turn the shoe shop into some kind of temporary seasonal food vending kind of opportunity, like ice cream or coffee. At the present moment, we're not pursuing moving the shoe shop or making that kind of food service happen. It is on the plan because that was the recommended location by the designer. But it's, as part of this, at least phase of the project, we don't have an active plan in place to move that shoe shop. That would be a bigger undertaking. And also the shoe shop requires a lot of stabilization, and it might not be wise to move it. So I think it's a bigger conversation about the shoe shop. So just to be clear, that is where it potentially could go, but at the moment we don't intend to move it or to
Okay, thank you,
pursue that
Kristen.
use this year.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes,
So
Susan.
will you be able to access this area without going into the museum? Can just Joe Schmo walking by walk in and sit down? Or do you have to go into the museum?
You will not have to go into the museum. The plan does contemplate a couple of gates onto the property, and there would be one on the museum side and one on the street side. And I have had a couple conversations with DPW in town about the contemplated plans for the downtown, because I believe the sidewalk is slated to move from, the tea house corner of Monument Street to the other side of Monument Street, which would mean people would be crossing and pretty much arriving more so on the museum's property than the town hall lawn. So there may need to be some tweaking to that corner of our lot once that's finalized, because I don't want people, particularly families, to be crossing there and then walking down the driveway to get into the yard. We would want people to be able to access it from the sidewalk, whether you were using that new crosswalk or not, that you could come.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
John, you had a question?
I just want to thank you, Kristen, for the presentation. And I was interested just how you came up with the figure that you're asking for based on the total price of the project. Was that something cost out by the developer?
Yes, the developer put there's an estimate included in the application for the $87,000 supporting that request. The balance of the funds would go for electrical and lighting. We would likely have to run some conduit to different parts of the property. So our electrician has talked to us about that. And then, depending on how much we raise might inform the quality and expense of the fixtures that we get, frankly, out there. And then also the seating. And we also have included in that 122, which is a wish list item of mine, some radiant heating for underneath the brick walkway. As someone who has shoveled that walkway many times, I think it would be great to be able to flip a switch when it snows and have it melt. So about 5,000 of that amount is for that. And that would be, sometimes as we plan out these projects, we're not able to achieve every objective, but we do price them all out in the with the goal of raising the funds for everything that we would like. But if we're not able to, we know where adjustments can be made in order to complete the project.
Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions? No? Okay. Well, Kristen, I want to thank you very much for coming in and explaining it all in detail to us. And we will all be back again next week when we decide how to fund these various projects. So with that, I'd like to close this particular part of our meeting and go back to the agenda where the first thing is to review and approve the minutes of January 31, 2023. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
Ms. Chairman, I've scanned them and I'd like to move that we approve them as written.
Okay, is there a second?
I
Judy?
second.
Thank you. Are there any additions or corrections to be made?
Yes,
Yes? Who said yes?
I did. Susan,
Ah.
who else? Under the Town of Wenham Town Hall HVAC project, it more or less indicates that the only reason we weren't entertaining it was because it wasn't appropriate. I thought as well that we weren't entertaining it because we got no cost estimates. And the select board had voted to use ARPA funds for those.
Right. Let's see, is Catherine Tinsley? Do you think you could amend that section to include those 2 points?
It's on both of them. It's the town hall security and.
Right.
Yes, can you offer me the language that you want to insert so the committee can approve it, please?
Susan, you want to tell her what you'd like?
Basically, the select board voted, I believe, back in December to use ARPA funds for both of
On
those.
12/20.
On
December
12/20.
Yeah.
To use ARPA funds for the security upgrade and the HVAC. And no estimates or backup was received with the application, either application.
Is there a second to that amendment she's just proposed? Rick?
I second it, Mrs. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. All right, can we take a vote on the amendment, Susan?
What do I do?
Just
Say
say yes.
yes.
Make a motion
Yes,
to amend.
I
John?
make a motion to amend.
Yeah, you made the motion to amend, and it's
Okay,
been seconded. And now we're
Say
going to vote
yes.
on it.
yes.
Okay, Leo,
Yes.
Trudy,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Janet? Janet's muted.
And
Janet,
frozen.
just raise your hand if you agree.
I agree, yes.
Good. Rick,
Yes.
you agreed. Okay, I guess that is it. So the Catherine will make that change in the minutes, and they are now approved as amended.
Thank you.
Ms. Chairman, will you entertain a motion to adjourn?
No.
Don't
No,
rush
Leo.
us, Leo, for goodness sakes.
Leo, I know you'd love to, but let me bring up a few more things. The next item on the agenda was review fund balances available. Joe, do you know if those balances are available?
So the TA is not here tonight. I did check in with him today and he said he was going to submit them to the committee ahead of the meeting next week before the 9th.
Good, okay, so noted. Therefore, now the next items, okay, that are quick that we hope Mr. Stronzi can tolerate, is the question of possible meeting formats going forward. Staying in this, which is the original Zoom, a hybrid, or in person. Do anybody have any thoughts on that?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I do have a very short presentation if you want
Okay,
to see that.
okay, very short. We'd love to hear it.
Just pull that up here. Okay, so just again, just a short presentation. Zoom, so basically public meetings in their current formats for Massachusetts. So I have a brief background here. In response to COVID-19 pandemic, the governor, Charlie Baker, at the time signed an executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. A lot of changes were made at the time, notably public bodies, as in boards and committees, were relieved from the open meeting law requirement that meetings be conducted in a public place that is open, physically accessible to the public, provided that the public body ensure public access. And it has to be through adequate alternative means. And what does that mean? So that means access through telephone, internet. It could even be YouTube, Facebook Live, just as long as it doesn't have to be Zoom. Some towns use, Teams, just as long as the public can follow the meeting in real time. Doesn't necessarily have to be on Zoom though. And both chairs and public body quorums are not required to be physically present at these meetings. But there, other provisions remain intact, such as maintaining accurate minutes and posting meetings 48 hours in advance. Again, just Governor Baker signed an extension back in February 2022. That was until July 15th of 2022. And the current law was signed into actually Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito when she was acting governor, and she signed into law. It's right now called Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, and that's the current controlling law. So basically, there essentially are three options to meet. So these are fully remote meetings, a hybrid meeting, or the in-person meetings that were used prior to the pandemic. Fully remote meetings, so no one is physically at the meetings. They are remote. Again, this doesn't have to be via Zoom. It can be on telephone, YouTube. A lot of towns do use Zoom, but that's not the only outlet. It also is very important just to make sure that all discussions are clearly audible to the public and to the board. And just at the beginning of meetings, the chair announces all members of the public body, as everyone knows, and all votes still must be taken by roll call. So again, a lot of the open meeting law provisions are still intact. Hybrid meetings are a combination of in-person and remote. And under state law, the chair can decide that the public body attend in person, remote, or both. The chair can also require that the public do the same as long as it is lawful. I say this just because I checked in with the AG's office. They have found that it is unacceptable. I'm not sure this happens a lot, quite frankly, but it's unacceptable to hold a public meeting where the public body is completely remote. So like on, Zoom, for instance, you require the public to attend in person. So that is not lawful. Again, roll call votes have to be taken. Other, regular aspects are still intact of the open meeting law. If for the town of Wenham, if the board does want to use the hybrid format, someone from the public body would set up IT equipment such as the OWL. In-person meeting is just what, like I said, the prior format was prior to the governor's executive order. And this is where everyone is in person. And so the current state law still relieves the chair, quorum, or even a single member of the public body the requirement to be in person. So not to add a little caveat in here, but under the current law, say like even if the CPC, for instance, were to have a public meeting posted and saying it's an in-person meeting, if a certain amount of, even a quorum couldn't make it at the last minute, to be in person, they could still call in. That would still be lawful because the requirement that the chair and a quorum be physically present is currently suspended. So if they decide to meet in person, we obviously would work with the chair to make sure that the meeting is done in the safest way possible, meaning, social distancing is practiced, and just, we want to make sure everyone is safe, is as safe as possible if it is fully in person. Just a couple of miscellaneous notes. A chair of public body's been asked a couple times to me. So is not required to have public comment. However, the Attorney General does encourage all public comments when feasible. But again, that is up to the chair to have that. And again, this current law is set to expire on March 31st. So that's next month, 2023. And if that is not renewed, the prior format will be back in effect. For example, one component would be chairs and quorums would be required to be physically present at meetings. Not to say that a member or two couldn't call in remotely if for whatever reason, if they had to, as long as it's not the whole quorum or the chair. The chair does have to be in person as well. And I've been keeping track of this, and I will alert all the town chairs if this law is extended. I personally feel it will be, but you never know. So that's all I really have, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, if anyone has any
Thank
questions.
you, Joe. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Chair Lady, because of previous commitments, I have to excuse myself. Thank you very
We
much.
will miss you, but we understand, Leo. We'll
Thank
see you
you very
next
much.
week. See you next week, right? Mhm. Thank you. Any questions on these types of meetings?
Are we going to take a vote on this at some point?
No, it's my discretion.
Oh, well, then I have a comment.
Yeah, comments is what I would like.
Okay, thank you. I'm not in favor of the hybrid because I don't know if it's because the last several selectmen's meeting, select board has been meeting like this. I don't know if it's because HW Cam is in there. I'm not quite sure, but there always seems to be some difficulties, whether you can't see and hear, but there's something that's going on that it's not easy for the public at home to be able to see everything. I mean, it takes them a while. I'm not sure what that process is, why that is happening, but until that is ironed out completely, I am not in favor of hybrid meetings.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Rick.
I am in favor of this remote Zoom process with the full panel visible, so that we can all see each other. I think that does provide some sense of camaraderie for our team. I know when I was leading this small part of this meeting, I watched everybody. That's what I do when I run a Zoom meeting. I watch everybody to see who's casting off, who like maybe wants to ask a question, but just can't be realized. So I'm all in favor for keeping this.
Okay, thank you. Janet. You're
I'm
muted.
Sorry, I try to stay, I'm sorry. I mute because my dogs bark all the time. I don't want you
We
to hear them. I'm
appreciate
sorry.
that. Thank you.
But I agree with Rick. I like this format. I just feel like it's comfortable for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anybody else who has any thoughts? I think most of us have agreed that this is preferable for the time being. And if the law changes, we will have to address it. But I don't see us going back into town hall partially. And I agree with Trudy, the last selectmen's meeting was close to being dysfunctional at certain parts of the meeting. If they moved back, and I noticed they were all sitting around one table. There was no social distancing at all. So that's something else we have to consider. I think this way on Zoom, we're all safe in our own homes and we have flexibility. We can be traveling and still call in. So.
And I believe that for the public, it also gives them an easier way to come join us. And I think we need to keep working on that, get more public involvement.
And I think it's the state knows that many more people participate and come to the meetings with a Zoom format than in the in-person meetings. Well, good. All right, we can move on. So we'll stay in this format as long as we can and see what comes. Now, the next thing that I wanted to do, and I don't know if it's getting too late and we don't have to do it, but I wanted to give you some of the links to some of the resources we have on CPC, on CPA, what the state law wants from us, and what the coalition in Boston can provide for us. It's got a wealth of information. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them, but I'd like to hear any questions.
I'd like to maybe see if I can make a motion to move this to a future agenda so we can keep it quiet tonight. Is that okay if I make a motion to move agenda item number 9 to our
future meeting?
A future meeting, yes.
A future meeting, sure. I think we're all in agreement. I think we've done a lot and seen a lot tonight, a lot to digest. Now, next week, Joe, you have promised us on behalf of Steve that we will have our numbers. I pray that we have them at least 24 hours in advance. They won't be useful if we get them at the meeting. If you could convey that to Mr. Poulos.
Sure.
So, and all I point out is several of 3 or 4 or 5 of you are relatively new. We don't have to fund every application. We don't have to fund every application in full. And I think it's even been noted that we could increase the allocation to a project. But I would hope that maybe you could look a bit at some of these things and see what we were chartered to do. What is the role? What's the role of CPC in town government? What's the state law? What did the state think that we could do? And a question that people have asked me over the years is, how many projects did we fund that the town would not have funded at town meeting? In other words, are these good things? Is it, we have roughly $750,000 a year of new money. We get 450 roughly from the 3% surcharge, and then the state matches whatever it is. But let's say it's we get at least 600. Some years we've gotten 800. Is this the best? Are we spending that money for the benefit of everybody in the community? I think that's what I'm saying, and not just special interests. Any comments on that?
Madam
Yes,
Chair,
John?
I have a question. Thank you for sending the links. I have looked at some of the information on the community preservation site. But just to your last point, I'm still interested and haven't been able to find a database of the CPC applications that this committee has looked at.
Right.
Over the years, and what the deliberation was on those
Well, that would mean
applications.
getting a hold of the minutes from the meetings. Joe, is that something you have access to? Probably hard copies, files, Jackie's files?
Yeah, I do have, I want to say 2 or 3 of Jackie's old files. So I'm assuming there would be some minutes in them. I don't know how far back they go, but I can definitely do some research.
I know on the web. Oh, sorry.
Go
I was
ahead,
gonna
Joe.
say, I know on the website, it goes back to, I believe, 2015.
Okay, well, that's not quite far enough. I think we need to, if we could go back a bit further.
Harriet, might Stuart have that information? I'm not sure, but I wonder.
Would Stuart? No. I
No.
think the question is, what applications were presented to CPC and not funded?
Oh, I'm
Is
sorry, and not funded.
No.
Okay.
And
No,
not funded. No?
That's not my question. I would like to see what applications came to the committee and whichever way they were administered, whether they were funded or not funded. If they were funded, were they funded at the amount requested, or was the deliberation to give less than that? I just would like to see some information as far as.
Well, that would be in the minutes if you want to
Right.
know all of that. The coalition will only have information on projects actually funded that we send in. I've forgotten the form. I keep thinking of R2D2 C30 or whatever. This form that we have to file every September to the state to tell us what we did fund.
So the coalition does have the documentation on what we did
No.
approve and funded?
Well, no, they know what projects we funded, but I don't think when you say documentation, I don't think they have the applications. They just know, for sake of argument, that we agreed to give the Wenham Museum money for the HVAC a few years ago, that kind of thing. But for example, going back to the Wenham Museum, here's an example. They requested, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, monies to restore the building. And we voted we shorted them $10,000 because we thought that last $10,000 was for painting, and painting is maintenance. So we cut that amount, but the WVIS gave $10,000 to make that up to the museum. But all the coalition in Boston would have is that the lesser number was approved at town meeting. I think that's what they have, what was approved. I don't know if that's an interesting point. How many things were not approved at town meeting? I can't think of any. If it gets that far. We'll see. Anyway, if there's no more business to come before the meeting tonight, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Okay. Anybody
Ellen,
else who's going to make the motion?
I'd like to
Mary,
make a
second.
motion that we adjourn this meeting at 8:15 PM.
Wonderful. All those in favor? Susan?
Aye.
Aye.
Trudy?
Aye.
I'm just going around the picture as I see it. Rick?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Janet?
Aye.
John?
Yes.
I think that's everybody. Leo, we know, agreed in principle. Okay, well then we'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you all. It's a good meeting. And thank you, Rick, very much.
He did a really good job.
Good. Excellent. Okay. Good night.